5 aircraft sitting on a runway in the Saudi desert, not scrambled, not in the air, just sitting there, and now they are gone. That is where we begin today. Not with a political statement, not with a flag, with the operational reality of what was destroyed at Prince Sultan Air Base and what that actually means for American air power in this theater. KC-135 Stratotankers are not fighters. They do not carry missiles or drop bombs. What they carry is fuel, and in modern air warfare, fuel is reach. Fuel is time. Fuel is the difference between a strike package that can operate deep inside contested airspace and one that has to turn back before it even gets close. When Iran targeted those 5 aircraft, they were not going after hardware for the sake of optics. They were going after American range. They were going after the visible thread that connects every long distance sortie, every strike mission, every sustained air operation across this region. If that strike is confirmed, and we will work through what we know and what we do not. This is not just an attack on a base. It is a message about where this conflict is heading and how quickly the stakes are rising for everyone inside it. Before we get into the specifics of what happened and what it means, you need to understand something that almost every television segment on this will get wrong. The story being told in most coverage is about missiles and damage assessments. That is the surface. The deeper story is about strategic signaling, about what Iran is telling the United States, Saudi Arabia, and every other regional actor watching closely from Riyadh to Tel Aviv to Doha. Ray McGovern spent 27 years at the CIA, including time preparing the president's daily brief. He has said repeatedly that the most dangerous moments in international conflict are not when adversaries fight, they are when one side decides the other is no longer deterred. When the old rules stop holding, what we are going to walk through today is exactly that. The event itself, the military logic behind it, the strategic consequences that follow, and the question that everyone in Washington and Riyadh is now sitting with: what comes next? Stay with me. This takes some unpacking, and the details matter. And the details matter. Prince Sultan Air Base sits roughly 80 kilometers southeast of Riyadh. It hosts a substantial American military presence, one that has grown considerably since the United States began repositioning forces in response to heightened Iranian activity across the region. According to early reporting, Iran launched a coordinated missile strike targeting the base. 5 KC-135 Stratotankers were hit while parked on the flight line. That detail matters. These aircraft were on the ground, not hidden, not dispersed, not in hardened shelters. They were in the open. Whether that reflects intelligence failure, logistics constraints, or something else entirely, we do not yet know. What we know is the outcome: 5 tankers destroyed or heavily damaged. That is a significant portion of a theater-level refueling capability. The Iranian missile program, particularly its ballistic arsenal, has grown more precise over the past decade. The January 2020 strike on Al Assad Air Base in Iraq demonstrated that Iran can hit specific coordinates with meaningful accuracy. What happened at Prince Sultan fits a pattern. This was not random. Let me explain why losing 5 tankers is not a footnote. In the U.S. Air Force's operational architecture, aerial refueling is the single biggest force multiplier available, short of a carrier strike group. A fighter aircraft like an F-15E or an F-35A has a combat radius measured in hundreds of miles without refueling. With a KC, KC-135 in the loop. That range extends dramatically enough to strike targets deep inside Iran from bases across the Gulf, enough to sustain fighter patrols for hours beyond what internal fuel allows. There are roughly 400 KC-135S in the U.S. Air Force inventory globally, but the number forward deployed to any given theater at any given time is far smaller. Losing 5 in a single strike represents a real, not symbolic, degradation of operational capacity in the specific region. Missions that were feasible before this strike, long-range strikes, sustained combat air patrols, extended ISR operations, now require either repositioning replacement aircraft from outside the theater, which takes time, or accepting a reduced operational tempo. Neither option is without cost. Iran has now, if reports are confirmed, struck a U.S. military installation in Saudi Arabia directly. That is a threshold that has not been crossed in this way before. Iran has used proxies, the Houthis, Shia militias in Iraq, to keep direct confrontation at arm's length. A direct missile strike on a Saudi base hosting American forces is a different calculation entirely. The question that follows is not just what Washington does, it is what Riyadh does. Saudi Arabia's relationship with the United States on security matters is not conditional. The Saudi leadership will be watching the American response very carefully, not just for military action, but for the speed, the substance, and the political will it signals. Israel is also watching. Tel Aviv has been operating under the assumption that U.S. air assets in the region provide a backstop, that American reach supports Israeli operational options against Iranian nuclear facilities if it comes to that. A degraded American tanker capacity, even temporarily, recalibrates that assumption, and Iran is watching all of them. The strike, if it was designed to send a message rather than simply cause damage, was designed to test exactly this: whether America responds, how it responds, and what the cost of escalating further would be. Tehran has spent years building a deterrence architecture premised on the idea that the United States does not want another full regional war. This strike is a probe of that premise. For Saudi Arabia, the calculus has shifted in a painful direction. The kingdom has been navigating carefully between normalization pressures from Washington, the ongoing conflict in Yemen, and its own interest in avoiding becoming a direct battleground. Navigation just got harder. Saudi Arabia hosts American forces in part because American presence is a deterrent. If that presence becomes a target rather than a shield, if hosting U.S. assets now draws Iranian fire, the political mathematics inside Riyadh change. That is not a reason for the kingdom to expel American forces, but it is a reason for the conversations in the royal court to become considerably more tense. For the United States, the response options sit along a spectrum with real costs at every point. A proportional military response risks expanding the conflict. A diplomatic response risks looking weak at a moment when American deterrence is already being tested in multiple theaters simultaneously. Doing nothing is not actually an option. It signals to every adversary watching from Beijing to Moscow that American assets can be struck without consequence. For Iran, the calculus is coldly rational by their own logic. Tehran has watched American hesitation carefully sigh, Nice, the Obama administration's Syria red line, through the Trump administration's maximum pressure policy. Through a series of exchanges where American forces absorbed attacks without a response that fundamentally changed Iranian behavior. The leadership in Tehran has learned something from that pattern. Whether that learning is correct, they are acting on it. The risk in that logic, and this is where someone with McGovern's background would press hard, is that intelligence assessments of adversary intentions are notoriously difficult to get right. Iran may believe it understands American tolerance for escalation. It may be wrong. Miscalculation in this environment does not produce a limited skirmish. It produces something much larger. Here's the image I want to leave you with. Somewhere in the Saudi desert on a runway that was supposed to be safe, 5 large aircraft now sit as wreckage or are being assessed for what remains of them. Each one represents years of manufacturing, training pipelines, maintenance crews, deployments. Each one represents capability that took decades to build and a single strike to remove from the board. That is how modern conflict works at the operational level, not always in dramatic tank battles or naval engagements. Sometimes in the quiet targeting of infrastructure, the fuel, the logistics, the invisible connective tissue that makes a military force capable of acting at distance. Ray McGovern has spent his life arguing that the most important function of intelligence is not to tell leaders what they want to hear, but to give them an honest picture of the situation so they can make decisions that do not lead to catastrophe. The situation right now is this: a threshold has been crossed, a message has been sent, and multiple capitals are now deciding what they believe it means. The decisions made in the next days and weeks in Washington, in Riyadh, in Tehran, in Tel Aviv will shape what the next chapter of this conflict looks like. Those decisions will be made under pressure with incomplete information by leaders whose domestic political situations color everything they see. That is why understanding the strategic architecture, the logic underneath the headlines matters. Not because you could change those decisions, but because you will be living in their consequences. Watch this space. The next move matters enormously. If this analysis gave you something to think about, hit the like button. It helps more people find work like this. Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of how these situations develop. Not just react to the headlines after the fact. And they leave a comment with this question: do you think the United States will respond militarily to this strike, or will it seek a diplomatic off-ramp? Tell me what you think and why. This channel is not affiliated with Ray McGovern or any of his official representatives. The content you just watched is informational in nature, inspired by the publicly available teachings, writings, and interviews of Ray McGovern. It does not constitute professional advice of any kind before making any major decision related to the topics discussed here. Please conduct your own research and consult a qualified professional. The analysis presented in this video is based on open source intelligence, public reporting, and strategic commentary. It does not represent official, military, financial, or government positions. All reference footage and imagery belong to their respective owners and are cited for commentary purposes only.